David Moyes has just completed his pre-match press conference for our game at home to Newcastle. They took the trip down to London Stadium for Wednesday night. Again, it was rearranged from September after we had the sad passing of the Queen. So yeah, this is a rearranged game put in the middle of a very congested and busy fixture schedule for West Ham, including we've got Europe in here and of course loads of Premier League games. And this, as a rearranged one, comes on a Wednesday, and we do play Saturday as well, so it's a quick turnaround. And I'm going to now talk and discuss through what David Moyes has said in the lead up to this game then. So we're going to get straight on into it then. So he said it's roughly the same squad. The only news is Gianluca Scamacca has got 2 weeks rehabilitation on his knee. We don't think it needs surgery, but we will have to see how it goes. That's the main news coming out of the press conference today, and that is that obviously Scamacca, there was rumblings about that he went home and didn't watch all of the match because he had some work done to his knee and he wasn't quite going to be fit enough. And now we're hearing he's going to have a couple of weeks of rehabilitation. It's frustrating, isn't it? Really, really frustrating. Will it work out at West Ham for him? I don't know. I really don't know. But at the moment, he keeps picking up. There's obviously there's an overriding sort of issue there with his knee, because it's been a couple of occasions now he has picked up an injury to do with his knee. Now he's got to have another fortnight of rehabilitation. Just something not quite right there with the agent swapping and with a disagreement rumoured between him and Moyes. I just honestly can't see him working out at West Ham. So it's frustrating again. But would he have played? Probably not. It'll probably be Antonio, I'd expect, or Danny Ings will start again and be given no service whatsoever. On signings, he says, sometimes I think it does take time for players to settle in. Newcastle have done that, but in the past 2 years, we have as well. On Paqueta and Guimaraes, he said he's a really good player, but Newcastle have a really good player in Guimaraes as well. It's not just his ability, we're still looking for his creativity, and hopefully we can have more chances created to his game. So he's referencing Paqueta there and how he's seen like a sort of improvement, and he's hoping, Moyes, that Paqueta can now go to the next level. Of course, last time out when we played Newcastle, it was a 1-1 draw, and they were notably without Bruno Guimaraes. He got that red card, and it was in between that red card he got and the Carabao Cup final. So he was missing for that game, which I thought was an absolutely massive miss for them there, because he's a big player for him, and he's back for this game, which puts in another factor. It was a great point I think we've got up there at St James's Park, but they've got their main man Guimaraes back now, so that's going to give the game a different dimension. And from last time, it's just going to make the midfield battle even bigger. And that's why I think we'll talk about it more in the preview tonight, but that's why I think that this game is suited for Flynn Downs to come in over Thomas Suchek then. So moving on, he said, in terms of the Premier League competition, Moyes says, it makes me smile. Look at Brighton, look at Brentford. We have been among the top teams for a couple of years. I do think there's a really, really competitive Premier League, and it would be very difficult to judge how it will work next year as well. So he sort of referenced himself and how we did do well, and now sort of Brighton and Brentford have replaced us in those sort of roles, which, and on the Premier League Roundup show every week, we give lots of credit to the teams like Fulham, Brighton, Brentford around these sort of areas, because they're pushing the big teams again. And with Chelsea having the big drop off this season, it's key that a few of these sides have stepped up, and they have. Unfortunately, it's not us again, but I think David Moyes is still under this illusion that we're going to get back to there at some point. Under him, I just can't see it at all. But in terms of the relegation battle, he says the players have done what I expect them to do. We've got big characters. We wanted to be much higher in the Premier League. We want to look higher up and now be positive. It puts us in a position where it's up to us to stay away from the bottom of the Premier League. Well, I'm not quite sure the players have done everything you expect them to do, unless you've gone out there and said, don't press, sit back, which you probably has, to be fair. Don't press, sit back. I want us to play the most negative football, not help Danny Ings whatsoever, not give him any service, and try and win 1-0 every week, which seems to be the way Moyes is going, especially from what we saw against Southampton on Sunday. So I'm not sure they've done everything probably expected. They definitely haven't done everything expected from us, especially with just a month ago we were down at Brighton, and I won't say any more about that. They didn't do anything that was expected that day. So he's under this weird illusion, Moyes, isn't he? It's strange. It really, really is strange. On the season so far, he mentions injuries. He says maybe more changes than I would have liked. Also, it's getting the players from the last 2 or 3 years to keep at that level. I suppose he's got a point here where we have had a few injuries, but it hasn't been an absolute nightmare. He got rid of a centre-back and didn't bring one in. So some of this doesn't make sense at all. And injuries, it's going to come with football. You can't expect to go for a whole season and not pick up any injuries. It's going to happen. Yes, we've been quite unfortunate with a couple of players, but it's going to happen. And that's football for you. So I'm not really going to take that as the excuse. And if they're Premier League players, then they should be able to keep at the same standard, especially with some of them who are 24, 25. They should be keeping the standard that they've been at. If they've set it, then we expect them to meet that, and obviously they haven't. In terms of selection dilemmas, Moyes said, I've got decisions in quite a few positions, competition for places. I'm hoping the competition will add to the level of the team. Let's hope we can keep the squad fit and healthy as much as we can. We'll use this depth, then use Downs as a centre mid, use these players, get them in there, get Fornals involved. He's got to make changes tomorrow night. He has chopped and changed around things formation-wise, but I mean, in terms of personnel, he needs to change things around a bit because they're not going to play 3 games in 6 days, not all of them. So this is probably the game where we'll make a couple of changes maybe. I bring Downs in over Souček. Fornals probably comes in to that attacking midfield role to give Paqueta a bit of a rest. That's just a couple that I've mentioned off the top of my head. Out of one of these next 2 games, in terms of Fulham and the game against Newcastle coming up, he's got to make those sorts of changes in one of them. It's going to be interesting to see which one he does that. He did mention the managers that have been sacked this week, Rodgers and Potter. He says I was really disappointed for Brendan, and I'm exactly the same for Graham Potter, because I think they're both excellent managers. Sadly, in the industry we're in, it can happen. The competition in the league next year, someone can surprise teams. Managers are in this little bubble where they sort of really like each other, don't they? Oh, I feel sorry for X and Y, but that's the industry we live in. Wake up. Moyes, you probably should have been gone a long, long time ago. That should have been you that managers were mentioning that have been sacked. So yeah, a little nod there to his manager friends. On the sackings, he says managers don't get given time. Any time a manager is in trouble, the media are pushing it. And not just the media though, Dave, is that the fans have pushed it as well. I feel like he's living in some sort of that all managers are safe. He's living a long time ago where managers didn't really get sacked. A bit strange, but there we go. On must-win games coming up, he says, who is saying it's a must-win game? We're treating every game as a must-win game, whether it's last season or this season. I do understand your point. We've not been in a strong position. The players understand the position we're in and what we have to try and do. We've been here and we have to try and find ways of winning it. Finally, a bit of sense from David Moyes. I sort of agree with the incentive of what he's saying here. Every game's a must-win game now, and you've got sides like Nottingham Forest in this relegation battle that seem to be dismissing their away games because their away form is just so poor. At this stage of the season, you can't afford to be doing that with games. I know we've got Arsenal, City, and Liverpool as games to come. I know we've still got those out of our 12 games left, or 10, whatever it is. But we've got to try and go into it with a positive attitude. We're West Ham, and it would be typical us to go and lose to a side like Bournemouth and then turn up and beat Man United or beat Liverpool. That's just the way things run with these sides, isn't it? But we need to, and I agree, we need to treat games as a must-win game every single time. We need to be constantly picking up points through these games and beating the sides around us. That's the most vital thing about it. But then in these games on Wednesday, I don't expect a team to step off the gas and go, oh, we don't really need to win this game. That's the right, attitude to have. Every game in a relegation battle is a must-win game, and hopefully Moyes has got that in his head. In terms of Newcastle, then he said probably this time last year we maybe dropped out of the Champions League places. They didn't have European games and different scenarios like we had. He said they've got Almiron and Joe Linton, and their form is good. People were talking about us a year ago. You have to try and keep on it and build it. Of course, we're not playing at a fantastic time. They went through that really dodgy spell where we were sort of a part of that when we got a point up at St James's Park. Now they beat Man United, and they've got some hope back there. And now I think they're back in the Champions League places again, and they're doing well. In terms of our own fitness then, Gerdon Zuma, he said, I think it's really important for us going forward in keeping Gerdon Zuma playing together. They have to make sure that they get on with each other. And even in the international break, we didn't have Naif here. We haven't had a chance to give them days to work with each other, but they are doing well. In terms of beating Southampton, he said it's given us a feeling of being able to win those crunch games. Of our home form has helped us as well. And he's right there, because our home form, I've seen people on Twitter calling the London Stadium a fortress. It's not a fortress. It's a soulless, atmosphere-less bowl. But we have been winning games there. The sort of attitude I took out of Sunday was we've now beaten Everton, Forest and Southampton, teams around us, and we've put them to the side. We've beaten them. And that's the key thing. If we would have drew or lost on Sunday, then we'd be looking at this in a whole different sort of way, and looking at the whole relegation battle in a whole different way. But if we can continue to beat the sides around us, then I think we're going to be okay. But fingers crossed. On our away form, he says it's not like the resilience we've had away in recent years. And well, you can say that again. David won one game in the Premier League away from home all season. David Moyes also mentioned it's a difficult thing to work out when it's good or bad to play a team like Newcastle. I don't think we've had a spell where they've fallen off. We've got to be ready, and we're in for a big game. We certainly are, and that's when it entered the embargo section for the press conference. So that's on a whole the main headlines and talking points to take out of it is that Scamacca's got another 2 weeks rehabilitation on his knee, so we won't be seeing him involved for a large proportion of April now. So that's frustrating. And they seem to be fully fit for the rest of it. No more injury concerns that Moyes has mentioned, and he's hopefully going to go. And we're going to go for it. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for watching. I'll see you on the preview later on for this Newcastle game. These games are relentless, and we'll see you soon right here on West Ham Official. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Cheers, guys, and bye-bye.